Hello and welcome to Chapter 9, Lesson 9. Today what we're going to be talking about is multiplying fractions by whole numbers. And our goal is that you can use models and equations, remember equations have equal signs, to multiply a fraction by a whole number. So let's take a look. Here's our first example. Each card on a trivia game has 6 questions. Each question represents 1/6 of the questions on the card. Makes sense, right? So if I have 6 questions on my card, each one is going to be 1 out of 6, 1 out of 6, 1 out of 6, 1 out of 6, and so on, right? Caleb correctly answered 4 of the questions. What fraction of the questions on the card did he answer correctly? So we have to multiply 4 times 1/6, which, we know that's going to be 4/6, right? We kind of talked about that yesterday, so I don't know that. Well, let's take a look here. So 1 times 1/6 is 1/6. 2 times 1/6 is 2/6. 3 times 1/6, 3/6. 4 times 1/6, 4/6, and so on. Here's a representation of that. Use fraction tiles. 4 times 1/6 equals 4/6, or I could reduce it to, notice, these are the same, 1/3. If I take 4/6 divided by 2, divide by 2, and I would get 2/3. That would be my simplified answer. Okay, this one's kind of easy, so let's go on to another one that gets a little more tricky. Okay. You can use equations and properties to multiply a fraction by a whole number. Find 5 times 3/10. Identify the 2 whole numbers between which the product lies. I love that. Okay, let's take a peek here. Think of 3/10 as a multiple of 1/10. Okay, so if I think of 3/10 as 3 times 1/10, okay, so then I would think of 5 times 3/10 as 5 times the quantity. That just means we're going to multiply it by 3 times 1/10. Now look at this, you guys. Oh, this is awesome. I'm going to use the associative property to show that I can move those parentheses. Instead of multiplying 3 times 1/10, I'm going to move them so that I can multiply 5 times 3 first, because I like that a lot better. So if I move those parentheses because of the associative property, I can do that. Then I'm doing 15 times 1/10. Okay, so then I just know I'm doing 15 times 1, so I'm going to get 15/10. Okay, I have 15 groups of 1/10 or 15/10. Then I'm going to turn it into a mixed number, because we don't like writing fractions as improper fractions like our final answer. We want them to be a mixed number, and we want to reduce the fraction of that mixed number. Okay, so if I take 15/10, I can look at that as 10/10 plus 5/10. I know that 10/10 is just 1, and I know that 5/10 can be reduced. I can divide them both by 5, the numerator and denominator. And so I will get 5 divided by 5 is 1. 10 divided by 5 is 2, or 1/2. Look at that. Wow. So I can take 5 times 3/10, and I know that it's the same as saying 1 and 1/2. Neat. Now the number 1.5 lies between the whole numbers of 1 and 2. So let's look at the product before it was simplified. 5 times 3/10 equals 15/10. And notice this too. Notice what I did was I did 5 times 3 to get 15 over 10. Notice my denominator is not changing. Let's make sure we're always being aware of that. Okay? So the numerator of the product is the same as the product of the whole number. The numerator of the product is the same as the product of the whole number and the numerator of the fraction. right? We're multiplying the whole number and the numerator of the fraction. 5 times 3 is 15. The denominator of the product is the same as the denominator of the fraction. Nice. Okay, so let's take a peek here. So notice when I'm doing 5 times 1/8, right, I'm just taking 5 times 1, so I'm getting 5/8. 4 times 2/3, notice my denominator doesn't change, I'm multiplying only the numerator. Now how I like to think of this, okay, to make it make a little more sense, is 5 is the same as 5 over 1. So when I multiply that by 1/8, I multiply my numerators and I multiply my denominators. Okay, when we get into other things, like when multiplying fractions by fractions, that's what we do. Like if I wanted to take 2/3 times 7/8, I would multiply numerators to get 14, multiply denominators to get 24, and then I would simplify. Okay, so that's why I always like to write my whole number over 1, just because that makes it so much easier to kind of visualize. So anyway here, let's do number 2. So if I do this 4 over 1, I'm going to do 4 times 2 is 8 over 3. And you guys, this one's an improper fraction. So what I need to do here is I need to look at it. I've taught you kind of 2 ways. I can do 3/3 plus, look at this, I can do 2 of them, plus 3/3, which will get me to 6/3, plus 2/3. So I can look at it this way. So I have 1 plus 1 plus 2/3. So then I can know that my answer is 2 and 2/3. Another way is I can do numerator divided by the denominator. 8 divided by 3 is 2 minus 6. I'm left with 2 left over. And this is my numerator and this is my denominator. 2 and 2/3. So I got a couple ways of thinking about it. So let's take a look here. Does 3 times 7/8 equal 3 and 7/8? Is that true? Let's take a look here. Let's do our little trick, okay? So I would need to multiply here. I'm going to erase this here. Get rid of all this stuff so I can do it right below so it makes sense. Okay. So I'm going to take 3 times 7 and get 21/8. Okay, and then I'm going to do my little trick of top, 21, divided by the bottom. 21 divided by 8, 2 8s can go in there. I'm going to subtract 16. And then I'm going to get a 5 left over. So really this answer is 2 and 5/8. So does it equal 3 and 7/8? No, it doesn't. And that's a really common misconception. So I'm really glad that they brought this up so we can talk about it. So don't just assume that, oh, just put a 3 in front of it, right? If this was a plus, 3 plus 7/8, then yes, it does equal 3 and 7/8. But you need to do the math where we're multiplying that whole number by the numerator and then changing it into a mixed number to make sure that you are getting the right answer. Let's look at a few more problems here. Okay, so I'm going to multiply whole number by the numerator. So I'm going to get 3 times 2 is 6 over 5. Now that's an improper fraction. I notice I can break it into 5/5 plus 1/5, because that's going to get me 6/5. So 5/5 is equal to 1 plus 1/5. So my answer is 1 and 1/5. All right, let's look at the next one. 7 times 3 is 21 over 4. Denominator doesn't change. So I'm going to do top, oops, not 12, 21. Top 21 divided by 4. That's going to be 5 minus 20. I have 1 left over. This is my numerator. This is my denominator. 5 1/4 is my answer. Neat. Let's try some more. Okay, 5 times 5 is 25 over 6. I'm going to do top divided by the bottom. 25 divided by 6 is 4 minus 24. 1 left over. 1/6. 4 1/6. Okay, let's do another one. 2 times 8 is 16/10. Now this one, I can show it as 10/10 plus 6/10. So this is going to be 1 6/10. Now notice I can reduce that. So I'm going to divide by 2, and get 3/5. So my final answer is going to be 1 3/5. Cool. Now I wanted to do some examples here too. Here we go. So 5 times 7 is 35/10. Okay, so I'm going to take 35 divided by 10. 10 goes into 30 3 times, minus 30. 35 3 times, minus 30. I have 5 left over. 35, or 3 5/10. Hopefully you're starting to get to a point where you see 5 is half of 10, so that can be reduced to half. If we're not quite there yet, we're still going to divide by 5, and notice that this is 1/2. So our final answer is 3 1/2, and 3 1/2 lies between 3 and 4. If I draw that on a number line, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I would count 1, 2, 3, sorry, I better get my 0 in here. 1, 2, 3 1/2 would be right here, and it lies between 3 and 4. All right, next one, 7 and 8. 7 times 8 is 56 tenths. Okay, these tenth ones are really nice because we really could view this too as, well, 10 goes into 56 5 times, which would get me to 50, and I have 6 left over, so it would be 5 6/10. Or we can still divide it out. 56 divided by 10. 56 divided by 10 is 5 minus 50. I have 6 left over, so it's going to be 5 6/10, which can be reduced. Divide by 2, and I would get 3/5. So our answer is 5 3/5. Now 5 3/5 is going to lie between 5 and 6. If I draw this out a little bit more, okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 3/5 is going to be a little more than half. Okay, so 5 3/5 would be about right there. Now, how did I know it was a little more than a half? Because half of 5 is 2 1/2, and 3 is a little more than 2 1/2, and so that gets me a little bit more. Okay, so that's all that I have for you today. Thanks for watching. Good luck on your assignment, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.